Hi, this is Howie, the Dialed In Watchmaker. So last week I had a really great opportunity to present this video to a client who had me do a full service on their Admiral Pocket watch. And I made a little video presentation of the work I did. And it was a really nice experience. We had a good discussion. It was a good learning experience. So here's the video. I hope you enjoy it. If it's something that you would like to have done to your watch, feel free to send me a message. Thanks.
All right, let's get started on this Admiral Pocket watch. It comes with a nice chain. Make sure you hold on to that. That's a cool part for sure. So now I'm going to align the hands so that taking them off is easier. Put down a little piece of plastic. That helps protect the dial. These dials are very delicate. They're often painted, so it's best to protect them as much as possible. So now I'm going to open the case back, unlock the case holding screw, and the movement, the mechanism should just pop right up. And then I'm going to remove the dial using two little screws on the side, and the dial should just come right off. So the case, I'm going to make sure to clean that up as well. That gets pretty grimy, so I'm going to throw it. I have an ultrasonic cleaner. I'm going to throw that in. But for now, I'm going to start taking the movement apart. And as I'm taking it apart, I'm looking at all the different gears and plates and jewels and checking for damage. You can't really tell until you start taking it apart. And of course, I let down the power to the mainspring, because if you keep the mainspring, if it's wound up and you start taking it apart, it can very well explode on you, and then you have little watch parts all over your desk, and that is definitely not ideal. So here I'm taking out, I took out the balance there, and then I'm looking at the pallet fork. That's part of the escapement. And I noticed when I took this apart that the pallet fork was damaged. The pallet fork has two rectangle jewels on it that engage with the escapement, and they need to be very smooth and flat, because if it's not, the escape wheel won't engage with it properly. So if that's the case, then yeah. If you look at this close up, you can see the impulse plane of the jewel should be the reflective part there. It should be flat, but you can see there's a couple little divots in there, and that can happen. It's a ruby. Back in the day, they were made with rubies. They're made nowadays. This same part is made with synthetic rubies, but those rubies are very hard, but also very brittle. So if they chip, then they're done for. You can't really fix them. So I'll have to order another part for that. But until then, I'm just going to take it apart and then clean it. So I'm taking off the bridges that hold the transmission or the gear train. The gear train has 4 gears connected to the mainspring barrel. There's two pivots on each pivot on each side, and it pokes through the bottom, pokes through the top. So right now I'm cleaning the pivot holes, and these are jewels as well. They're ruby jewels, and they can get all grimy, and they need to be very clean, because that's where they need to be really smooth, because you're going to lubricate that part. And if there's any gunk or chips or anything, it can slow the whole machine up. So, and then I'm cleaning it out with pegwood. That helps get in the small spots that have collected grime and whatnot. As you can see, there's quite a few parts. I think this pocket watch probably has maybe 100 parts, little screws and springs and stuff. Here it is all laid out. Maybe it's not 100. It's a lot. So here's the mainspring barrel. You can see how dirty it is and grimy over time. I'm sure it's been serviced many times over its lifetime. They would be serviced probably every 5 to 7 years back in the day when they were used a lot. This was the iPhone of the day. Everybody had a pocket watch. Everybody was using it, so they were constantly being serviced. So many different watchmakers looked at this over the years. But to me, it doesn't seem like it's been serviced for a couple decades at least, for sure, because it's collected dirt and grime. But that's good. We can clean that no problem. I have a really cool watch cleaning machine. That's the balance wheel. You can see the tight hairspring there. That goes back and forth. Those little jewel holes there. And all the different screws. They're all different heights and sizes. You got to make sure when you're putting it back together that the screws are in the right spot, because if you put a screw in the wrong spot, it can do damage. You can see this part is the broken tooth on that wheel there. That's a part I'm going to have to replace too. That's the ratchet wheel. And there's the pallet fork again with the 2 ruby jewels. So here's the cleaning basket that I put the part. Once I've taken the watch apart, I put it into these little compartments and these little baskets that separate the different parts. You know, the screws go in one basket, the springs go in another, whatnot. And then sorry about the awkwardness, I'm doing this with one hand while I'm holding my phone. So over here is my trusty cleaning machine. This is probably from the early 70s, this machine, but I bought it refurbished, and it's in great condition. It's got the big dials on it. Reminds me of like a sci-fi movie from the 70s. So this is an ultrasonic cleaner, and I'm going to hang the basket there, and it's going to lower the basket into different liquids, different cleaning solutions, and different rinse solutions, and then it spins dry at the end. That cleaning takes about half an hour or so. So here is the finished, cleaned, all the clean parts ready to put back together. You can really tell the difference once it's gone through the cleaning machine, how much cleaner it is, sparkly it is. So that's the mainspring, the coily thing there. That holds all the power, and then the mainspring barrel, and then the two plates and the main plate. And here's all the small parts that go underneath it. That's the gear train right here. There's 4 gears, including the escape wheel. The escape wheel is the one with the weird teeth there. And that's the winding and setting stuff, all there, different springs. And the balance wheel that ticks back and forth, the balance bridge and the regulating arm. And there's the dial side where you have the hour wheel and the minute wheel. That's where the hands connect to. And there's all the different screws. This is not a lot of screws in this watch. I've seen watches where there's like 50 screws, and they're all different sizes. And you really have to pay attention. Because once you start putting it back together and you lose track of the screws, it can slow up the process of putting it back together for sure. So here as I'm putting it back together, I'm lubricating each piece properly. That little tray there with the yellow oiler, that's all different lubrications, different thicknesses, go at different parts for different needs. If it's really thick, it's going to be a part that is under high friction. If it's really thin, it's going to be a fast-moving part like the escapement. It's constantly moving, so it needs a nice thin oil. But this oil is designed perfectly that it stays in place. It doesn't spread throughout the watch. But of course, you have to put the right amount. If you put too much oil, it can spread. If the oil spreads, that's what collects dirt. If dirt gets in there, then it can start to wear. So yeah. All right, here we go. What am I doing here? Oh yes, I'm putting together the gear train now. So as I put these gears on, goes on the main plate, and then I have the 2 top plates that sandwich it, and I got to make sure that the pivots are poking through the jewels on the bottom and the top. If they're not poking through properly and I end up screwing it down, it can very easily break. So at this point, I'm making sure that the pivots are lined up with the top plate, lined up with the bottom plate, and once they're all lined up nice and it just the gears turn nice and smooth, then I can add the screws and screw it down nice and tight. And then as I'm doing that, I'm lubricating it as well. So you notice on my left hand, I've got those little they're called finger cots, because the oils from your hands can attract dust as well. So you want to make sure to not touch the parts with your bare fingers. So that's why I'm wearing those things. So at this point, I'm putting the different screws in. Now these screws are pretty tricky because they look the same, but they're very different in height. So I've got to make sure that as I'm putting the screws in, that they're the right height. All right. So now I'm putting on the winding mechanism and lubricating it. It's not bubble gum you see there. That's called Rodico. That helps me remove little oil spots that have gone spread a bit too much, and helps clean up the thing as I'm putting it together. All these little tools and things really make a difference in how easy it is to put it back together. It'd be nice if I could go this fast in real life. I'd get so much work done. Holy smokes. All right. So putting more screws on. Here you can see this is the dial side. This is if you can see, there's a little C-shaped spring that's under tension. That's holding the the setting and winding mechanism in place, and that transfers the energy to the minute wheel and to the cannon pinion, which is right in the middle. The part right in the middle, that holds the minute hand. And that turns around once every 60 minutes. Okay, so now I'm doing a pretty big repair. I got a part in the mail. It's an extra pallet fork from a different movement that I found. Now what I have to do is I have to remove those jewels on the pallet fork. So I have two different pallet forks. One is the original pallet fork from your watch, and then another one is from a donor movement. Now the donor movement contains the good jewels. So what I have to do is I have to heat up this part and melt the shellac, which is holding the jewels in place. It's pretty cool. So you gotta, when you're doing this, as you can see, there's an oil lamp there with the little flame. So I'm heating it up so that the shellac melts, and then I'm trying to gently remove it from the part. You've got to be so careful, because if you push too hard, that jewel can just ping across the room and you'll never find it. And of course, there's a little piece of granite that I'm putting it on because it'll melt right through my desk here. And as I'm working on it, you got to be careful not to touch your nose to it. I've seen guys with little burns on the tip of their noses from getting too close when they're doing this kind of work. You got to be careful. So I've removed the jewels, and you can see them. These are the new jewels, so they're like a millimeter long, so they're really tiny. And then I'm going to clean the surfaces, because the surfaces have to be nice and flat, and dust-free, dirt-free. And as I do that, then I'm going to put it into the pallet fork that's on your watch. Basically switching out the two parts, because the one was chipped and these guys aren't. So, and this can be tricky too. Obviously pushing it back in place, because it's friction fit into the pallet fork. And once I put it into the pallet fork, then I put very small, granule, like a size of a piece of sand, on top of the jewels, and then melt them. Here it is. This is the shellac. So it's like, it's like a hard candy. And then I'm going to put it on the ends of the jewel there, the parts that connect to the steel of the pallet fork. You can see that I've put them there and just balance them there, and I'm going to heat it up, and it's going to just melt onto the pallet fork and then infiltrate the little cracks, and it's going to hold the pallet stones onto the pallet fork. And this is me. I've finished doing it. And you can see, nice shiny surface now. That's the new part. And you can see how nice and reflective that is, and nice and smooth it is. And then on the other side, you can see how the shellac has melted, and it's just holding it in place. It's a pretty interesting way to do it. It makes it easier so that you can replace those parts if they do chip, because if it's solid, yeah. And here, if you listen, that is the sound of the pallet fork moving back and forth with the escape wheel, and that ticking sound, that's the ticking of your watch. Of course, that's moving really fast. It's going tick, tick, tick. Here it is in slow motion, the balance wheel going back and forth. That's pretty cool. I love watching this stuff in slow motion. Yeah. So you can see on the top of the movement there's a new part, the ratchet wheel I've replaced. It's nice and shiny as well. So all in all, in this watch, I've replaced two parts: the pallet jewels and the ratchet wheel. And that's part of the winding that connects to the crown. So here I'm putting the final pieces back together, putting the dial back on, and then I'm pushing the hands back on, making sure they're aligned perfectly. Sorry about the watch went off camera here. You can never tell, when you're doing this solo. I'm not a very good cameraman by myself. So I put the hands back on, and I'm screwing the crystal back on, and then screwing the case back on, and there you go. And now I'm going to wind it up and test it over a couple days. I've regulated the watch to keep as good time as possible. It is an old watch, so it doesn't keep great time, even after the adjustments. But it should last you through the day, no problem.